Hi, my name is Sebastian, and I am glad to give you the welcome to Business Matters with React Native, the podcast where we talk about how to cut down your expenses at time to develop software. Today, we are going to be exploring a really interesting topic. Let's talk about KPIs at time to develop software. If you have a software development team or you are developing a product, it's really interesting for you because we will be talking about what are the metrics that you need to take in count at time to measure your team performance, how to improve those metrics, and how to measure that metrics. Talking about it, let's base this video on the sentence, what isn't measured does not grow. It means if you don't know what exactly is your team paid file, you will not be able to create a game plan to improve. Let's start reviewing point by point the better or the most common KPIs to have in count in a software development team. And the first KPI that we will be talking about is the code quality. Code quality is a really complex KPI because we will divide or split this KPI in three small ones. The first one is called churn, and it means how many or how frequently are you changing the code that you write before? What does it measure? It measures the quality of the solutions your team is building. Because if you are constantly changing, deleting or updating the functions or the code you already built, it means you are not building high quality solutions or you are not planning for scalability. If you take in count that, you need to make sure the solutions your team is building are scalable. The second point that we are going to be exploring that belongs to code quality is the code complexity. Code complexity really matters because again, we are talking about the scalability and how our functions are maintaining his performance with large amounts of arguments. It's pretty important because depending on that, you will be able to handle millions of users or only thousands. So the third point I want to evaluate here is the code coverage. Code coverage is the most important metric here in terms of product quality. The two before metrics are in terms of code quality and how you can make sure your code is understandable and you can hire new developers and join these developers to your team. This metric and the code coverage will assure you how is your product quality. You will make sure that you are testing every component in your application and then new features will not break all functionality, or at least it's the goal from unit testing. So now let's talk about a new metric or a new KPI that is really important when you are talking about development teams, and it is the lead time. How much time is between when you get a requirement and when you deliver a new value or you deliver this requirement in a real product. It means if you, by instance, are building a restaurant's application, how much time do you take to add a new module to this application since the client asks you? This feature talks a lot about, or this metric talks a lot about how organized your team is. Now, let's talk about team velocity. When we talk about team velocity, we are talking more specifically about the developer's speed. In agile teams, it's pretty common to be measuring how many history points takes to a developer to solve a single problem. Then it's pretty important because with this information, you will be able to know exactly how faster your developers are in terms of getting a problem or getting an issue and converting that in a solution. It's important because you will be able to give them some kind of rewards to make sure they are improving his speed in terms of development and delivering his products. Now, let's talk about deployment frequency. It's pretty important because this metric helps you to know how frequently are you able to deliver new functionality to your clients. In a changing market, you are obligated to deploy new functionality frequently to your users because if not, new products will come and get part of the market you are trying to get. So it means you need to make sure your team is deploying as frequently as possible new updates to your application. So obviously it depends on the kind of applications because you can be talking about internal business application that helps you only to track exactly what is happening in your company and then maybe it's not valuable metric to have in count. But generally those metrics I just talked about are the most common metrics to have in count when you are talking about KPIs in a software development team. Right now we will explore the last metric and I will say it's the most important for the client side when when we are talking about development performance, and it's how frequently we can deliver value, not only features, because it's not only in development side, it's most in the business side, how your business team is able to be deploying value to the customers. Then this is pretty important because it will talk you about how good is your business or your product team taking care about what really matters, and for sure it will help you to identify what's the bottleneck in your deployment process. Because let's imagine you are building a product and this product is going really well, but in some point you start seeing that your deployment value metric is going a little bit down because you can identify several causes. The first cause I will say is maybe your development team is having a poor code quality, and then you are struggling more in bug fixing than deploying new features. Or maybe your product team is not giving useful insights to your development team, or is not creating the accurate task to make sure they are only running in development processes, and your development team is slow now with business solutions or trying to figure out what's a better solution in terms of products. And that's not the goal. The goal is that your business team or your product team is taking care about the product vision, and your development team is taking care about how good is your code and how scalable the solution you are building is. Hey, thank you very much to be up to the end of this podcast. If you want to continue learning about KPIs for the developers specifically, let's see you in the next podcast. Bye bye.